This is part 3, episode 130. Time passed day after day. From Juzi's perspective, Hui Yuhao should be making his move soon. At least, he should make some kind of probing attack and attempt to destroy some of their surveillance soul tools on the side. His concealing abilities could be maximized only when there were fewer surveillance soul tools. But what caught her a little off guard was that she was waiting around as 5 days flashed by. Hui Yuhao didn't appear in the end, and their plan was successfully carried out. They were starting to extract the metals from the mine. The roads were too far, and in addition to the terrible conditions in a cold and dreadful place like the extreme north, transport was very inconvenient. Therefore, Juzi had decided before they departed that they would extract, refine and process everything on the spot. They would only transport all the rare metals when refinement was complete. Xu Qianran was the only person who knew that she was here in person, while all the rare metals that they would extract from this operation would all belong to the Empire's royal family, so that they could strengthen their control over the imperial family. Everything was arranged after she had a discussion with Xu Qianran. Has he really left? That's not quite like his personality. He has always been the kind to become braver as pressure piles on, and he will never admit defeat. Even if I am his enemy, there's no reason for him to leave just like that, since he is so determined to oppose me. Juzi was as dejected as she was suspicious. Truthfully, she would rather clash with Hui Yuhao than receive news once more that she had lost him. In the end, she had absolute authority over the army here, and all she had to do was not hurt him, even if they faced each other on the battlefield. She didn't feel very comfortable that he would leave just like that. This was how complicated a woman's emotions were. Of course, Hui Yuhao wouldn't give up. After traveling continuously for a long time, and 3 days after departing the Sun Moon Empire's great army, he was inside the extreme North's core region. Hui Yuhao didn't run into too much trouble as he flew forward. Typical soul beasts couldn't threaten him at all with his strength, and even those that were relatively stronger would immediately scamper away when he imitated the Ice Empress aura. The Ice Jade Empress Scorpion was one of the extreme North's 3 heavenly kings. Most high-level soul beasts from the extreme North were very familiar with the Ice Empress aura, and that was the reason why Hui Yuhao's imitation was almost always successful. The temperature dropped even more as they entered the extreme North's core region. There were hurricanes and biting winds high up in the sky. Hui Yuhao didn't know how to fly when he was last here, so he didn't feel how powerful these hurricanes were. This time, he immediately suffered a blow as soon as he flew into the extreme North's core region. A powerful gust of wind swept over, and Hui Yuhao couldn't resist at all as he was thrown higher into the sky. This terrifying gust was incredible and contained vigorous explosiveness. If Hui Yuhao's body hadn't been sufficiently tough, and if he hadn't possessed an ultimate ice martial soul, he would have been torn to pieces. Hui Yuhao was barely able to land on the ground. He was overcome with fear with his knowledge of powerful individuals. That gust of wind was probably equivalent to an 8-ringed Soul Doluor's attack at full strength. He had just entered the extreme North's core region. Wouldn't it become even more terrifying if he went deeper in? No wonder he almost never saw any soul beasts flying in the sky here. It lived up to its name as a forbidden ground for humans. The extreme North's core region shared a name with the Great Star Do Forest's slaughtering grounds. Even the Sun Moon Empire's Evil Demon Forest was far inferior. In the end, the Evil Demon Forest got its reputation because of how powerful the Evil Eye Tyrant King was. The Great Star Do Forest's slaughtering grounds contained many savage beasts, and the threat in the extreme North's core region wasn't from its soul beasts, it was from its environment. In such an environment, even titled Doluor couldn't survive for too long. The air was incredibly dry, while the chilly winds cut like blades. Not a single stalk of grass could be seen, and the incredibly low temperatures could continuously burn down a Soul Master's soul power. It was almost impossible for them to live here. Furthermore, Ice-type Soul Masters were a minority anyway. Therefore, very few Soul Masters came to this place to hunt soul beasts. This was the reason why the overall strength of the extreme North's soul beasts had grown to such a formidable level over recent years. If not for the fact that this place wasn't that suitable for soul beasts to live, it probably wouldn't take long for the extreme North's soul beasts to catch up with the strength of the Great Star Doe Forest's soul beasts. Hu Yuhao no longer dared to fly in the sky with the lesson he had learned. He walked on the ground, and even though there were gusts of cold wind that cut through the air on the ground, they were much gentler compared to the winds in the air. Hu Yuhao had the Sky Dream Iceworm to protect him the last time he was here, and only then could he resist the severe cold. He was back here many years later now, and he felt a little strange. That, during the first time he was here, he was as weak as an ant compared to the other beings in the extreme north. Without the Sky Dream Iceworm's help, just the environment here would have killed him countless times over. 10 years later today, he had the ability to face this environment's dreadful conditions by himself. Furthermore, 2 of the extreme North's 3 heavenly kings were accompanying him. 10 years ago, him doing this was something that he didn't even dare to think about. Hu Yuhao didn't ask the Ice Empress or the Snow Empress anything else as they continued forward. The Ice and the Snow Empress would tell him when they arrived. He moved forward very naturally, as his eyes moved a little as he glanced towards his left. There was life rippling from that place, and those undulations were very intense. What's that? Hu Yuhao immediately used spiritual detection and projected it into the distance. He quickly saw several soul beasts. There were several extreme northern bears that were incredibly muscular. These bears were very large, at least 7 to 8 meters tall when they stood up, while their bodies were extremely thick and tough. These soul beasts had thick fur, and their strength was terrifying. Furthermore, their explosiveness was so vigorous that they could spring over short distances as quickly as agility-type soul beasts. They were high up in the food chain, within the extreme North's icy plains. There were 4 bears here, and 3 of them were grown, while there was only one that was relatively smaller, only 3 meters tall. It looked like a baby bear. Full-grown extreme northern bears had to have at least 1,000 years of cultivation, but one couldn't underestimate their threat just because they were only 1,000-year soul beasts. The extreme northern bears in this place were like the dark golden terraclaw bears in the Great Star Doe Forest. 1,000-year extreme northern bears could rival normal 10,000-year soul beasts, and even though their fighting strength still couldn't match up to that of the dark golden terraclaw bears, very few soul beasts dared to provoke them. At this moment, these 4 extreme northern bears were charging at Hu Yuhao at breakneck speed. Hu Yuhao instantly felt a little exasperated, because he remembered the extreme northern bear's characteristics. Powerful soul beasts like that in the extreme north had very sensitive senses of smell, because the extreme north always had a scarcity of food. Therefore, their sense of smell became very strong through their consistent evolution. They could smell other living beings from kilometers away, and it was clear that they had discovered him and were treating him like prey. Hu Yuhao didn't run, because he remembered something else when he recalled some information about the extreme northern bears. When he was undergoing training in the ultimate soldier plan, his teacher that was teaching him about food told him that the extreme northern bear's paws were the most delicious amongst the other bears. That was because they were living in the extreme north, and under continuous refining from the severe cold, their paws were especially fat and juicy. They could be cooked with certain special methods, and they would taste extremely delicious, while being extremely nutritious for humans. They were very beneficial to soul masters. However, nobody really dared to try to kill them, because they were naturally very ferocious and powerful. They lived in the extreme north's core region, and Soul Master's appetites were not enough for them to give their lives in this place. Therefore, the extreme northern bear's paws were sold at extremely high prices in every empire on the continent. There are 4 extreme northern bears. Since you're treating me like food, then I will not give you a chance. Let's see who gets to eat who in the end. You can't hurt them. The Ice Empress and Snow Empress voices rang out in Hu Yuhao's spiritual sea at the same time. Hu Yuhao's mouth twitched as he attempted to resist them. Why? Only they can treat me like food, but I'm not allowed to eat them. What kind of reasoning is that? The Ice Empress grunted coldly and said, if I say no, that means no. There aren't many soul beasts in the extreme north in the first place, and these bears are considered one of the rarer species. If these bears can grow until they reach 10,000 years of cultivation, they will become the main fighting force of the extreme north's soul beasts. Are you saying that you want to launch a beast wave? Who are you going to target? Hu Yuhao said exasperatedly. The Ice Empress snapped. What do you think? Don't you want to deal with the Sun Moon Empire's army? You think you can do that by yourself? What? You can command those ice bears. Hu Yuhao answered in shock. The Ice Empress laughed coldly. She said nothing, but the arrogance in her eyes was very evident. The 4 bears were charging very swiftly, and it didn't take long before they appeared in Hu Yuhao's vision. The extreme northern bears were very muscular, while their limbs were very well developed, but their brains weren't that simple. The 3 grown bears swiftly dispersed, and the burliest one was in the middle as it dashed toward Hu Yuhao. The other 2 wrapped around towards the flanks, while the smallest one followed behind. They were surrounding him. Hu Yuhao wasn't worried at all. The only thing he was thinking about was the bear's paws. What a pity that they were so delicious. The largest bear charged first. When it saw Hu Yuhao, who was standing there calmly, and the Ice and Snow Empress behind him, it was also momentarily stunned. It was the first time that it had come across humans that were so calm. Soul beasts that had relatively lower cultivation, like these, had never seen the Ice Empress or Snow Empress before, especially when they didn't have this form before. They were in human form now, and they were no different from humans when they were deliberately hiding their aura. Roar! The extreme northern bear roared as His Majesty was disregarded. It charged at Hu Yuhao with his muscular body, and its enormous frame stood up as it swung its paws down at him. Hu Yuhao's spiritual protection had been trained on it the entire time. He could clearly feel that when the bear was using its strength, its thick fur was immediately charged with intense soul power, and every single hair became like needles. Its fur was its best defense. There was no question that this bear was a kind of soul beast where its own body was its main strength. The extreme northern bears shared similar characteristics as the dark golden terraclaw bears, except it didn't have the dark golden terraclaw bear's fearsome claws. Hu Yuhao glanced at the Ice Empress and the Snow Empress, and when he realized that they didn't intend to do anything, he couldn't just stand there and let the bear smack him. He went forward to face the bear with form like a demon, and he grabbed the bear's right paw that was swiping down at him with both arms as he suddenly used his strength. Even though Hu Yuhao's martial soul didn't have anything that was based on strength, he had obtained part of the Golden Dragon's strength after Wang Shua had sacrificed himself for him. In addition to the fact that he had 7 soul rings, he definitely wasn't afraid of the bear in front of him in terms of strength. Hu Yuhao swung the bear's enormous body that was 8 meters tall into the air, and sent it crashing into the icy surface, as an explosive sound rang out. The other 2 bears that were charging in from the flank were taken by surprise. However, they accelerated as they charged toward Hu Yuhao furiously. This is how a male and 2 females are like. Hu Yuhao's body flickered, and he didn't take them by force anymore. Instead, he ran behind the Ice and Snow Empress. If you two aren't going to let me eat bear paws, shouldn't you at least be doing something? The Ice Empress grunted as she unleashed her aura that she was originally suppressing. An unrivaled aura was immediately released as a tremendous pressure that belonged to 100,000-year soul beast bore down on the 3 ice bears. The 3 bears that went berserk seemed like they were doused with a bucket of cold water as their hysterical aggression immediately disappeared. They growled softly as they stumbled and retreated. The bear that Hu Yuhao had slammed into the ground rolled onto one side, and its manner was almost a little comical. The tiny bear that was following from behind halted immediately when it felt this aura. It covered its head with its paws and lay prostrate on the ground with its buttocks pointed high up into the air, just like that. And that was as amusing as it could get. She's the Ice Empress after all. Hu Yuhao heaved a sigh of admiration. The Ice Empress' eyes flashed with green light as a strange sound rang out in her mouth. This sound had a very intriguing and alluring quality, and it was apparently the soul beast's language. The 3 bears nodded continuously when they heard her voice. A superior that was giving them so much pressure meant they didn't even consider resisting. The 3 bears got to their feet after a moment as they swiftly ran away into the distance. The Ice Empress stared at them as they left and muttered under her breath, "It feels great to be back. Snow, how nice would it be if we were still the dictators of this place? We don't have any natural enemies here, and nobody is around to oppose us. This is our paradise." The Snow Empress floated next to her and smiled as she replied, "I beg to differ. I have begun to understand humans ever since I walked into the human world. Over the past months and years, we have always detested humans, and we hate them for disturbing our way of life. However, we are disturbed considerably less by soul beasts here compared to the Great Star Doe Forest. Even though I have lost my memory after following Yuhao, I can still see the outside world very clearly as the Snow Lady. We have to admit that humans possess intelligence and creativity superior to ours, and we can only adapt to nature, while they can change everything. This is the reason why humans can conquer the entire continent even though they were so weak in the beginning when they were born. They are just too creative. If I were given a chance to choose again, perhaps I'd choose to be a human." The Ice Empress' body quivered. She didn't think the Snow Empress would say something like that, as this wasn't the Snow Empress that she knew. The Ice Empress turned towards her, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. The Snow Empress smiled and said, "Are you surprised? Have you not seen through everything, Ice? Think about it. How long have we been living in the extreme north? And how long have we been ruling over this place? Haven't you had enough? Right now, I just want to use the remaining years of my life to experience other things, as much as I can. This is the only way for me to feel excited, and for me to feel glorious. I won't regret it even if Yuhao doesn't succeed in the end. Perhaps I will choose to compress my origin and fuse with another human when that happens, and I'll become a human once more." The Ice Empress said, "You've changed, Snow." The Snow Empress smiled. "Yes, I've changed. Otherwise, how could I allow you to be together with Skydream? Speaking of which, how is he worthy of you?" The Ice Empress blushed as she lowered her head. She had been concealing her emotions ever since that day, and she hadn't really paid any regard to the Skydream Iceworm. The Skydream Iceworm wasn't worried, and he just stuck with her every day and asked about her well-being. The Ice Empress' expression of her love gave him blissful happiness, and what made him even more excited was that the Snow Empress didn't stop them from being together instead. She was adding fuel to the fire. The Ice Empress said after a few moments, "Yes. You've changed, and I have too. Perhaps, all this is because humans have affected us." She turned towards Hu Yuhao as she spoke. "I didn't ask any of you to change anything," Hu Yuhao said helplessly. The Ice Empress grunted and said, "We can see everything you do. You have been changing us through imperceptible influence." She paused for a moment after that, then continued, "Maybe I should feel fortunate, because you are the one who has shown us the world of humans. Before I met you, I had always believed that humans were tiny and pathetic with all their avarice, cruelty, and cunning. All they knew was to take from Mother Nature. But you have gradually changed my perspective after we met, and I have realized that there are humans like you who are determined with their emotions. Your creativity and your talent, and a great many other things, weren't bestowed upon you by me or the Sky Dream Iceworm. We are helping you, but the truth is that you've been helping us too. We have learned a great many things from you." Hu Yuhao smiled faintly and said, "Can you not be so touching? However, Brother Sky Dream should really thank me. Without me as a vessel, he wouldn't have had a chance of moving your heart. Don't talk about him." The Ice Empress retorted bashfully. Hu Yuhao smiled as he continued. "Ice Empress, since you've already confirmed your feelings, why do you still choose to run away from them? In this world, no matter how powerful you are, or how powerful you will become in the future, nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. Just like that day when I was surrounded by enemies on all sides. I would never have expected to land in a trap, and if I weren't lucky that day, in addition to my appropriate response, perhaps I would have died. And your destinies would have changed because of my death." The Ice Empress frowned said, "What are you trying to say? Don't beat about the bush." Hu Yuhao said, "I'm trying to tell you that life is short, and we have to enjoy our happiness while we still can. Since you have already confirmed your feelings, why don't you treat them accordingly? Brother Sky Dream truly likes you, and since you like him too, then you should accept his feelings seriously." The Ice Empress blushed even more as she rolled her eyes and said, "You males just know how to help other males." Hu Yuhao chuckled, but said nothing else. He turned towards the Snow Empress and said, "What should we do next?" The Snow Empress smiled plainly and said, "We wait. All we must do is wait here." Wait? Hu Yuhao was starting to understand. It seems like the Ice Empress asked those bears to pass some messages along. Right at this moment, the Snow Empress' elegant frame suddenly slid backwards and drifted into the sky like an apparition. "Be careful, Snow Empress," Hu Yuhao hurriedly shouted at her. He had personally experienced how frightening those hurricanes were in the sky, but the Ice Empress revealed a mocking smile. The Snow Empress seemed like she didn't hear Hu Yuhao's voice as she floated into the air. She was just dancing in the air, and she stepped on nothing as she waltzed into the wind. She gradually released her aura. Her aura wasn't as intimidating as the Ice Empress, but Hu Yuhao realized to his surprise that everything dimmed when her aura was unleashed. The white snow disappeared. All the ice and snow became blue, and the figure dancing in the sky was the only thing that was white. Her long sleeves waved as white ribbons danced around her. Those blue snowflakes circled around her as they rippled and unfolded. The Snow Lady was like the spirit of the snow. Her wonderful posture made her seem like she had become the core of the extreme North Pole region. Hu Yuhao's eyes were frozen. He had never expected someone to have such a beautiful posture, and that someone could be so alluring. The Snow Empress had unrivaled beauty. In this moment, she seemed almost completely immersed in her dance as the gusts in the air grew gentle. The temperature seemed to rise a little amidst the fluttering snowflakes. There was no warmth, but there was no coldness either. There was only a pure and refreshing coolness. The blue hue stretched far into the distance. Everywhere her eyes could reach had been tainted blue, while the sky and the ground could no longer be told apart. This feeling is just wonderful. Hu Yuhao believed, in that moment, that this was the most gorgeous scene he had ever seen. His heart was intoxicated in this moment, while the ice-type soul power in his body rippled along with the Snow Empress dance. This video will end here.
岂能容你这小小的火鸡撒野！